complete, no, auto.
Let's say yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so. So. I'm gonna tell you, I don't know.
All right, guys, our guest has just gotten here. We just need the introduction, but for those of you who are younger, I just want to run through some of the amazing roles that he's had. He was Jim on Taxi. He won some Emmys for that. He was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Jack Nicholson. He was the villain in Star Trek 3. What? Robert? What? Listen, hey, go look at his IMDb. We'll say 5 minutes. He was Professor Plum in Clue, Judge Duke in Frank Roger Rabbit. He was Professor in the Adam Sandler family movies in the 90s. A lot of voice work. And you know his most famous one. We'll talk about that. In just a moment, he's going to be coming in. They're like, he's ready. Very good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our special guest. It's an honor to sit here with him, Mr. Christopher Lloyd.
Right, stop.
Right here. Yes, sir. Mr. Lloyd, it is an honor to have you here, especially given that one of your famous roles is as a man of science. We're happy to have you here in the Rocket City for what's been a great time for us when it comes to science.
Okay. Good afternoon. Great to see you all. That's that.
So, like, I kind of want to start with that. Have you been following a bit of what's been happening with the Artemis program? Because we have a lot to do with it here in Huntsville. Before you got here, we found out that there's a couple of engineers in the rig.
Really? I don't dare talk. I think it's sort of like the space. It's so intriguing. I mean, to be in that vessel before the 6 of the moon, and be on the other side of the moon, and getting a view, it's incomprehensible. I mean, it's enough to be outside on a summer night and look up in the sky and see the moon. That's awesome. When you think of think about it, our place in the universe, and what's happening, and how we got here, or where we're going, but to be way out there and look back at the planet Earth, it's what an experience.
Well, it's been a thrill for many of us. Like I described to me, it was like Christmas morning every day during that mission. But I want to talk a little bit about your profession. So, like, for years, I feel like you've been in a lot of ensembles, like going back as far as like Taxi and
Yes.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Is that a place where you feel comfortable working with a lot of other actors in an ensemble like
Oh,
that?
yes. When you have a work in a group and you're all on the same page and want to achieve the same result, and a Taxi is a perfect example. I mean, I was a newcomer into the company. They had already been going on for some time, and an ideal. When I went to New York City to start out in the theater, and the ideal was to form an ensemble, and there were these great ensemble. There was the Moscow Art Theater, there was the Old Vic, there was the Commedia Française, the Commedia dell'arte. I mean, these were European companies that formed an ensemble, and they did so many plays a season with the same cast, maybe a couple of exceptions. But to be in it, you had to have the versatility to play different roles. One this month and this play a different role, and all of you had that, and you formed an ensemble. You had to work together. Of course, there were emotional eruptions, and people would have a little fight here and there, and blah, blah, blah. But essentially, you stuck together for the sake of the play, and to together make something that the audience will walk out of the theater and never forget. That was the deal. So, having been brought up with that kind of note, that kind of tradition, and then I leave, I go to Hollywood, and one day my agent says, "Go here," and I walk to, I forget the studio at the time, but into the area with taxied, and I stood off stage. I wasn't, and I observed the cast. Danny DeVito, Mary Lou Hacker, John Hirsch, etc. Give me a phone. What's it?
Worked with Andy Kaufman.
And Andy Kaufman, of course. But I watched all those people out on the stage rehearsing, and I just looked, and I thought, this is a goddamn ensemble. This is a real deal right here in Hollywood, all places. So that was a cool thing, and then gradually to start working with them and becoming a part of that was wonderful. But the essence of that was something you hope happens in every production you do. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it comes and goes. There's so many factors that create different personalities, different attitudes and points of view. But the magic is if all of you can, in spite of your differences, see eye to eye on how to make this production. That was the deal. So, I think I've said enough about that.
One of the things that has struck me about your career is you are often working on very technology-forward productions. So, like Roger Rabbit, for example, was doing a lot of things that wouldn't happen until decades later in terms of working with what would be CG, but was hand-drawn animation at the time. And you did a lot with Bob Zemeckis. How has it been working with new tools in filmmaking over those decades? Well, with Roger Rabbit, you were working with cartoons that wouldn't be there until like.
Oh, I don't know. You just sort of accept that they're there, that they're real, and respond to that in that way. Yeah, there were a lot of things where the reality was not real. and you have to make it. You have to find ways to convince them that it's real. Not what you were doing was real, but be whatever character I might be doing at the time.
So we're going to pass it to questions here in just a moment. But you had already worked with Bob Zemeckis quite a bit in a couple of different productions. And I know that one trivia story that everybody knows is they had to change the role of Marty kind of at the last minute. How was it working with Michael after you had already worked with another actor? Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, that was interesting because we at the Future One, we filmed 6 weeks. 6 weeks. That's a lot of film. That's a lot of shooting. I had no idea that people who were watching the dailies in the studio were quite content with Eric Stoltz. Eric Stoltz is a wonderful actor, but they felt the part needed Michael. Because they went for Michael to begin with, that he was doing Modern Family or a series, so he wasn't available. So Eric Stoltz was doing. And I have no inkling that they were going to be changing. And he was there for the run. And then one night we finished shooting, and during the day we were shooting, and Steven Spielberg got up in front of all of us and said, there's an announcement to be made. And that we were all together in a certain area, and we had something to tell us. And we did, and they told us, but we came to the set tomorrow. Michael J. Fox is going to be Michael. And I mean, what was the guy's name? Martin. I'm getting, I'm in the senior territory. Basically, was to be Marty. And my first thought with it, I feel that I have really, really worked hard to struggle to make Doc Brown real, credible, believable. And and I was still doing that. I was still, every scene was a challenge to who is Doc Brown and how do I make him real? And I thought, 6 weeks, I'm going to do that over again. Can I do it over again? Thoughts like that. When Eric Stoltz came in and everything clicked, Michael came in and everything clicked. He had the common timing that they needed, and he was very quick thinker and full of energy and excitement. It's what they had to have. And Michael, they wanted him originally because he bought that automatically. He didn't have to go digging for it. It was there. And Michael stepped in and everything was great. And everything gelled. And continued to go gel for all 3 films.
So guys, we have about 10 minutes. We can do Q&A. I think there's a hot mic over there. While they're coming over there, I wanted to just give you my personal compliment. So I was a kid growing up. My dad introduced me to those movies, and I love the high concept, time travel and all that. But the thing that really struck me was the great, teacher-pupil chemistry between you and Michael J. on the movies, and that was something that meant a lot to me. And that was on the Back to the Future trilogy, yes. That was something that struck me, and the way that your character teaches him about science is something that stuck to me. Now, that's one reason I work at my day job. Thank you, sir. Guys, we've got about 10 minutes. So if you keep your questions brief for me, do me a solid. We'll try to get through many of you as we can. So go ahead and tell us your name and where you're from as you come up to the mic.
I'm Mark from Tupelo, Mississippi. And I want to know where your role pieces and things to do in Denver when you're dead rank among some of your favorite roles.
He would like to know, what would you rank amongst your favorite roles?
No, I said the role pieces and things to do when you're in Denver when you're dead. Where does that rank among your favorite roles?
What's the name of the film? I'm sorry.
Things to do in Denver when you're dead.
Things to do in Denver when you're dead.
Things to do with Denver when you're dead. What about it?
How does it rank? How does that rank?
How does that rank among your roles?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. It was such a kind of a strange concept. I love the title, things to do with Denver. And, you know, and I love the characters. I love the character I had and the cast I was working with. It was a strange piece. The writing was unusual and kind of surreal, but it had a reality to it. Challenge you to breathe alive, and make alive. And I loved it. It was one of my favorites.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's me. I had a hard time on that too. All right, next up, tell us your name.
Justin, about from Germany.
Oh.
He's from Germany.
Okay,
My question is, going back to Turkey. And I was wondering, when you played the role there, when you
Hey, Stan, could you turn the mic up? Mr. Lloyd, thank you so much.
when you guys were playing Back to the Future 2, were you thinking that 2015 would be really like it was with 15? Would you really imagine that there would be hoverboards and flying cars in 2015?
His question is, I'm summarizing. When you build Back to the Future 2, did you feel as if the version of 2015 would eventually be accurate?
in what respect? What aspect of it say?
Well, he mentioned things like hoverboards and such.
If this thing, the things would be there in 2015, like the 2015.
I didn't think too much about it. I kind of just accepted the way it was going. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
I would say there were some things that were accurate, like flat screen TV. And like there was like a virtual reality headset that they had in the McFly household. There was some things I thought it got pretty close.
yeah. I kind of accepted what was in the writing, and to make that real for Doc. And that was always a challenge to however futuristic it would be. I needed to make that believable. That this guy Doc was in this world mentally and physically and trying to, like Doc solve a lot of problems by inventing the flux capacitor. I mean, give me a break. I mean, to enable time travel. I mean, that's where it was at. I hope I answered that.
Yes. I will say while we're getting the next one of my favorite costume details about 2015 and Back to the Future 2 was you wearing 2 ties. My brother-in-law always thought that was hilarious. Yeah. All right, next up, tell us your name.
Thank you. Question on background. And so when you were doing the trilogy, what was your favorite scene?
My favorite scene in the trilogy? Well, there's a scene more generally. Back to the Future 3 is my favorite of the 3 films. Part of that, I had scenes in the locomotive, and the locomotive goes way back before time travel, and it's such an incredible machine, burning coal, going down the tracks. I mean, it's kind of primitive. At the time, I loved being on one. I grew up, the locomotives were supposed to be advanced. I guess the locomotives at the time were futuristic, and here, so I love working on that. And I have scenes of horseback riding. There's a scene where I gallop along the tracks, chasing the train down the tracks, and I catch up, and then the train is right there, and then I grab the handle of the train and pull myself off the horse onto the train. A stuntman did that. So I led up to it.
To follow up on that, did it make it more fun that it was a lot more, I mean, it was a Western?
Yeah,
Doing
yeah.
that kind of
Oh, yeah.
thing?
Western, Westerns are fun. It's, we all grew up with the genre. At least I did. And then just, yeah, well, genre is fun to act in. Got the hat. All that stuff. And the romance of it, I love the romance that Doc had with Mary Steenburgen. I think it's the only romance I've ever had in the film. So that was cool. She was great to work. So it's fun there.
All right, I know we got a big line, but I think we got time for like just 2 or 3 more. Next up, sir.
My name's Johnny. I'm from Athens, Alabama, and I just want to say that you've had an amazing career. Thank you for coming visiting us here. My question is, if you had a DeLorean, where would you go and why?
You mean
Like
when?
from- like
When?
from-
If you had the time machine, when would you want to go?
If I had time to travel.
You have.
Oh, I think about that because the question comes up. What would you do? What would you do? And you can think, well, I go up 20,000 years ahead in time. But I'm always thinking about what's happening today, kind of to figure it out. And I would like to go maybe 50, 70 years ahead of today, just to see how the issues we have today. And there's a lot of them, how they're resolved or not. I like that, because I'm not gonna live long enough to see the answers to all these questions. I want to see the answers, how they turn up 50 years from now. So I choose to go like 50, 60, 70 years ahead, and see what's happening then. How did this work out? How do we work out climate problems? How do we work out other issues like the straits or whatever it is where we can't get oil today? How does that work out? Because they ain't gonna do it happen in a day. And how agriculture changed how medicine changes. I mean, there's something. I like to see how it all works out.
Yes, we got time for just one more. I'm sorry, everyone. So let's be the last one.
Hey, my name is Jonathan Tyndall. I'm from Huntsville, Alabama, Rocky City. I'm a big fan of you and a big fan of science and technology. And my question is, if you had a blue British police box, have you thought about owning a blue British police box in your garage?
Sorry, what was the question?
Have you thought about having a blue British police box like the TARDIS?
What is that?
This travel show, Doctor Who from over on the other side of the pond.
What does it enable you to do? Time travel?
But other
And
places.
it can make you go anywhere in space, probably a lot more than the DeLorean. Have you ever thought about that? Sounds like you don't know that concept.
I don't know. Go to the moon. I don't know. Well,
It would be a different career change for Doc Brown.
yeah. I got. Next time I'm here, I'll tell you what Thank you.
Mr. Lloyd, thank you so much for spending some time with us. I was just curious, given that you've worked so much in that area around science and have encouraged people like me to pursue it, I wondered if you had any other words of encouragement for the younger people here.
Well, get into it. I want to say, won't see what, I just finished working on a production, with, there's a company, a British company, I believe, and they're doing documentary series on various scientists. They asked me to narrate, and I just did one that was a study of Albert Einstein. And this guy is like from another planet. The perceptions he had about how we function, how black holes exist, and how we're related, it's just it's mind-boggling. And I've got 2 biographies about him from different angles. And if you're interested in that sort of thing, go for it, because there's so much that's still not explained or understood that governs our existence. And if you're a screenwriter, you got so much to work from. Check it out.
All right. Mr. Lloyd, thank you so much for coming to